Because guys, it's about the team. It's about being uncommon teammates the rest of the way. And stay ready. Are you going to need your teammates to have your back tomorrow? Okay? So maybe you didn't get called upon as much right now, but you got to stay ready tomorrow. Okay? I didn't go with you. Be ready tomorrow. Every single person, be ready, be ready, be ready. Everybody. Because we cannot do anything alone. What did I say yesterday? You want to go fast, you go what? Alone. You want to go far, you go what? Together. And everyone, it is not about me. I tell you, I gave all the credit on TV to the adjustments these 3 made. Coming out of timeouts, doing things the right way. Oh, only thing I did is hire people smarter than me. That was the smartest thing I did, okay? But it doesn't matter. It's not about me. It's not my program. It's our program, right? And we do things together. Do whatever it takes to get your bodies ready, your minds, your hearts, and we live to play another day. Here we go.
Hey, what's up? My name is DJ Eitzen, co-founder and COO of Limitless Minds, and today we have Coach Cori Close of the UCLA women's basketball team. And really excited to have her here. She really takes the principles of mindset that she learned back in the day. Actually, it's funny, her and Trevor worked together at Florida State University, and she takes those concepts and applies them with her team now, and has had a tremendous amount of success. But it's really cool to watch her unpack and see how she's very actionable and gives really specific things that she's doing with her team to get them to the next level in the area of mindset and also ultimately results. And so super excited to have her here on the webinar. And so with that, Trevor, we're going to hand it over to you.
DJ, thanks so much. Excited as we get to the last few of these to introduce and go into depth with today's. I already told her she was a badass, so I got to stick with that. But Coach Cori Close, an incredible college athlete at UC Santa Barbara, tough campus to live on. Obviously, you know,
everybody's got sacrifices.
Everybody's got to make sacrifices when your campus is the beach, and
you got to rough it in Montecito, but Cori had an excellent career, and then has had a really good coaching evolution, where she now currently is the very successful. It seems like the Sweet 16 is kind of mandatory for her at UCLA, but we crossed paths at Florida State University, so I was kind of sort of making my first transition into college sports. And Cori sent me this great note about the book, It Takes What It Takes, and we kind of got connected going back and forth.
And I recruited her to be on the webinar, but you know, independently, I guess, kind of talk as we were developing and sort of rebuilding Jimbo Fisher's Florida State University, which was not an easy task following Bobby Bowden. But
No.
Coach Bowden hadn't won in a long time, and you were there, and Coach Semrau was really close to Bobby, but it was time to go, and and Jimbo kind of implemented this very comprehensive mental conditioning program where I also got to connect and spend time with you guys as well. Kind of what were your early memories of that, and some of the things, just some of the things about the book that have resonated before we go on to more specific questions about you.
Well, you know, I think that's why I was inspired sort of to reach out to you, is that it was really fun to remember those impactful times. You spoke to our women's basketball team, you know, a few times when you came into town, but I hijacked and asked Jimbo if I could sit in the back row when you would speak to the football team too. So I would go over there and I just sort of be a fly on the wall. And I think I remember so much about, you know, how you had talked about really thinking about sort of what I read last week in the book about negative thinking being so much more powerful, and really rehearsing, having a plan and rehearsing what you want to see more of. And we now in our program now, we start out every day doing 4 to 5 minutes of visualization of what we want to see more of, and really setting out the intentional plan of how we want to grow from a mental conditioning standpoint. But I think, you know, I knew subconsciously as a coach that the mind was so powerful. You know, if you ask anyone, you know, especially in basketball, you say, okay, what percentage of the game do you think is mental? everyone will say 70%, 80%, 90%. Then I'll say, okay, the last time you went to the gym, the last time you went to practice, what percentage of that time did you spend on the mental side of the game? And usually the answer is 0, because, or maybe it's more than they think, but it's not intentional. It's not strategic. It doesn't fit into a comprehensive plan. And I think you really planted the seed inside of me that there had to be a plan and progression for the mental conditioning side, just like ball handling, just like defense. What were going to be your principles? How were you going to teach it? How are you going to reinforce it? And, and I think it had even more of an impact on me than I even realized. When I read the book, I realized how deep it actually went.
But, I've always believed it was like a steering wheel. And so a steering wheel that is driving a Pinto will go the direction you want, but not with any speed, any pace, or any horsepower. But even if I have a 2020 Range Rover worth $140,000, which I'm sure Coach Kelly has done a good job making sure the UCLA players have. Just kidding. That was blue chip. That was Nick Nolte. I just happened to see that. He felt bad about it. That was the SEC, I'm sure I'm talking about. But, and you have this incredible car. If you don't have directional control of it, it's not getting out of the, it's not getting out of the parking lot. So that was the great thing about my time with Coach Saban. And then obviously all those years at IMG Academy, we just built a system. And I've always believed, Cori, that like just try something. I was a high school teacher my first 4 years, and my main sport I was coaching was women's soccer and women's club soccer. And when ESPN released those Sports Century shows that had Michael Johnson and Lance Armstrong and Florence Griffith Joyner and Jackie Joyner Kersey, I would record those, and then every week for 30 minutes before a practice, we'd go with the Team Boca team in Boca Raton, Florida. We would go and we would watch, 20 minutes of clips I edited up with 2 VCRs, and then we would talk about what made Lance Armstrong unique, or Michael Johnson, or Jackie Joyner Kersey, or Cheryl Miller. It didn't matter the sport. Athletes love other athletes, and we just kind of started. Our first big highlight video we made for an NFL prospect was for Chris Winkie, off 2 VCRs to some Van Halen, and it was the first stage of taking the idea of imprinting,
right?
Affirmations of seeing yourself at first person present tense, but making it digital, and adding elements and adding in things because players didn't want to look at note cards anymore. So anyways, I love the idea of just doing something. And then what have you found, has been some of the challenges, helping develop, the best young talented women and their mindsets, as a coach, as a leader, relative to confidence, to internal self-talk, external self-talk, togetherness, fellowship. What have some of the challenges that you faced as, a Power 5 conference top head coach?
Well, honestly, I always say that they're not going to do through you until it does it in you. And I think that work through me. I think my biggest challenge, honestly, is my own role modeling, is really being of an awareness and working on it with the same expectation that I think they need to. And I think that's, it's really hard because you got a lot of distractions and a lot of things pulling on you as a leader. But for me, and from a mental conditioning standpoint, that's keeping the main thing. It's got to start in me first before I want to teach it through me. And so, I think that's a big challenge, is trying to have awareness and honesty. I have to be honest with my players about that, that maybe a time where I didn't handle it well. But I think that, another thing that we've started implement, you had mentioned, no one wants to do note cards anymore, but in addition to seeing themselves doing it right, or seeing a narrative that really plays and allows them to dream in that way and imprint on our mind, we've also implemented sound files right before they go to bed.
Yep.
And they've actually really bought into that. But before I expected them to do it, I wanted to do it myself for 60 days to try to really, how did I experience that? What effect did it have on me? But I think, the challenges are constant. The amount of information, I even think about when I met you back then, the amount of information was not to the degree that they are internalizing every minute. It's not even close. And the pace of change. So, you talk about in your book, it's sometimes what you need to eliminate, and so, and that too starts with me. Actually, a mutual friend of ours, I was talking about that challenge of just the phone and social media and the noise, and Steve Schembaum said to me,
he's incredibly talented,
very talented guy. And he said, Cori, I want to challenge you with 3 things. And then make a plan of how you're going to handle the team. And he talked about no screens 30 minutes before I go to bed and 30 minutes after I wake up. And every time I walk from the car to the gym or vice versa, anywhere on campus, I never have my phone out. That I'm looking, who can I contact? Who can I, smile at? How can I be aware? And, just some different things. He said, schedule my social media time. I don't do it as a default, because that's what our kids are doing all the time. Anytime there's a space of time, they're pulling it out and looking at it. And I'll tell you, you know how hard that was for me?
Yeah.
It was really hard. And it showed me, if I have that level of difficulty, I can't imagine for an 18 to 22-year-old what that's like. And so I think, as any leader, I think it's important that you hold the mirror up to yourself. And I had, and I'm a competitor. I love to compete. And I want to win, and there's so many things. I want to build our program. I want to impact lives. But I got to keep the main thing if I expect them to do the same.
And that's such a great, you think about, you're a leader, you're a tone setter. You get to go in Poly Pavilion and then I was out there with Oklahoma City a couple of years ago and saw Westbrook's new practice facility and just being there, a few days ago, kind of sneaking on campus and seeing the tennis facilities, and the intramural facilities are incredible. But what Steve challenged you, and anybody that would, Steve is a really good media and communication coach, runs a company called Game On Media, and very similar to Travis Thomas, who was on with us earlier. But it's not doing something. And I think the 5 or 6 things we don't do right now can change our lives. And we've talked about what we don't watch, what we don't engage, but taking it to that next level of 30 minutes. And I love the idea of when I'm walking to the car, when I'm not,
that's when you have an opportunity to say hello, to engage with the world. And of course you want to do that, but it's just discipline.
Yeah, so get crowded out.
And the other question, like just truthfully, in my years, almost, my first 8, I guess my first 9 years at IMG, I always had either Texas A&M women's soccer or Florida State women's soccer, and I would spend some time with Gary Blair and his players at A&M, and then obviously Coach Semrau anytime. I was like on so many flights with Coach Semrau, and just kind of we'd having these and just picking her brain and picking your guy's brain and vice versa. And Jimbo, I just, I'm not objective, and I know it didn't end great at Florida State. Unless they want to look at the 83-23 record, was such a good guy and such a sponge and so engaging. But one of the unique challenges, even sharing video and doing a lot of the same things with female athletes and many of the best that I've worked with in the world, primarily in tennis, is body image and how they see themselves, but more importantly, how they think other people see them, and which is a huge challenge, I think, for anybody, anyways.
Yeah.
How have you tackled that? Helping female athletes be more comfortable in their own skin.
Right. Well, and I don't think it's limited to just body image. I think they treat their basketball the same way. So I think most guys think they're better than they are, and most women think they're worse than they are. And so when they are when they come off the floor, they're going to remember every negative thing that happened in that practice or that game. They're going to remember every time you corrected them or said a negative thing or yelled at them or a teammate looked at them disappointingly. And it's very rare that that's not the case. So one of the things that we have really tried to do is before they leave the gym, they have to write, and it takes less than 5 minutes. We call it our What Went Well journal. That we try to stop that, because if they leave the gym thinking about that and beating themselves up, and even if they never verbalize it, that inner coach is way more powerful than anything I will ever do. They are telling themselves is negative visualization, and they're just increasing the likelihood, in my opinion, that it's going to happen again. So we've implemented something called What Went Well journals, where before they leave the gym, they have to write 2 things at the top. First is, basketball is what I do. It is not who I am. And trying to really not have that be their total identity, that trying to keep neutral thinking in that way. And then secondly, the definition of a growth mindset. The definition of a growth mindset, everything that happens to me today is an opportunity to learn. And then they write 10 things that went well in that practice. And they get an opportunity to try to reverse that tendency in their brain to process themselves negatively. So that's been a tactical thing that we've done. We try to have them, we call it catching each other doing it right.
Right.
We always are going to be able to correct them. We're always going to have those opportunities, but we not only want as a staff to catch people doing it right, but we want them to learn to do that with each other more often. And I just think trying to really define identity issues. I had a really interesting letter I wrote. I wrote a letter to 12 men's basketball alums at UCLA and 12 women's basketball alums over the course of generations and decades. And I asked them, what do you wish UCLA would have given you in your time here that they didn't? And it was interesting. Everyone on women's or men's, they did financial planning was one. They talked about how to manage their money and having a plan for that and being equipped. But the second one was identity. Help me learn how to see myself apart from my performance, apart from my sport. And I think that happens on a micro level in terms of that day or that behavior or that play. But I also think it happens on a more macro level in just how you see yourself throughout the day, both in body image, how you relate to your significant other, or how you relate to your teammates, or how you see yourself in the course of performance. So it's not easy. It's something that we try to tackle every single day. But I think it starts with defining your identity appropriately.
Right. And I mean, one of the great things is they like what I've always believed when it comes to building out a program and a program's architecture. I don't care whether you're Johnson & Johnson or Actelion in the pharmaceutical space, or Microsoft or UCLA or Claremont McKenna, or U.S. Army Special Operation Command. If it's important to the head coach, and there's no, the NBA, any type of sports psychology program is impossible for the most part. And the great thing about watching The Last Dance has been,
Phil Jackson, this is how we're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so the players did it.
Yeah.
And they were open to the yoga,
Mm-hmm.
the discussions, the round tables, all the different types of things. And I've got, obviously now in my 40s, I've got a lot of good friends that have made it to head coaches in the league or team presidents, or, across all the sports, just because I've been in the sports world since I was 23. And they're so terrified,
Mm-hmm.
that the player is going to call his agent, that if they ask for 8 minutes after practice, what are we going to do if I ask for that 8 minutes and they don't like it?
Yeah.
They don't enjoy it. What if the superstar doesn't enjoy it? And so in order to make a program like that journal, I mean, first of all, from your plan of I'm keeping my phone in, I'm putting my screen away, I'm walking. That's a behavior. That's not like an aspiration. It's not positive. It's something that you're doing or not doing.
Right.
And and I know for us at Georgia, we still what do you want this off season? Why wouldn't you get it individually? Why wouldn't we get it collectively as a team? Then we keep, a lot of that information anonymous, but we write down the behaviors, then we chart the things, if it's not sleeping, like a lot of time for college athlete, it's sleep, engaging the negativity, weight room, and then when we're still writing, okay, like what as a team, what collectively allows us to overcome that, and then individually, what do I need to do? And then we have all that stuff charted, put a bunch of pictures around it, and put it up in their lockers and put it on bag tags.
Yeah.
And we still do all that, but I can do all that because Kirby's smart. If a player said, "This is like dumbass," like the player has no way to get rid of me.
Right.
I still work on yearly contracts, and truthfully, I know at this point, you're not going to find anybody in sports better than me. Where I've been and what I've done, who I've seen, and how I've survived. In any sport, and I'm going to make it basic. I'm going to make it make sense. I'm going to do all that. So if they're saying that about me, like that's tough.
Yeah.
I mean, there's other better speakers. I'm not going to compete as a speaker with Inky Johnson, or Angela Manuel Davis. But I'm just talking about the education. But it does start at the top.
Well, it has to, and I think it's interesting too, is that I think that's the other thing that I've changed in my years. I'm an Inky Johnson fan. I love to watch his stuff in the morning, for instance. But if I want to really make a change in my team's DNA, it's got to be a systematic, simplistic, consistent curriculum, really, right? Yeah. It's got to be something that is implemented in the day-to-day over a long period of time. That's a series of behaviors that become muscle memory over a very extended period of time. And so, and we, you have to constantly work at that. And, and I think that's the difference, right? I think that's why you have job security, because you're doing something that isn't a quick fix. It makes someone feel good for 48 hours and helps them have one good practice because they're motivated. But at the same time, over the long haul, and my passion too, is that I want them to have these skills when they leave me. The mission of our program is to create an uncommon transformational experience that teaches, mentors, and equips young women for life beyond UCLA. And I had the incredible...
Say that again, Coach.
Okay. We want to create an uncommon transformational experience that teaches, mentors, and equips young women for life beyond UCLA. And I had the unbelievable experience of being mentored by John Wooden for 15 years. And he's just unbelievable in his, he was just way ahead of his time in these kinds of things. But I'll tell you a story. My 4th day on the job, I was overwhelmed. I haven't hired a staff. I'm going crazy. And I've met a lot of Coach Wooden's alumni, but I have not met John Valley. And John Valley walks into my office, and I've told this story 100 times, but it hits me every time. He walks in, he doesn't even introduce himself, really. He says, "I'm John Valley, and I've been married 38 years because of what Coach Wooden taught me. I've started 3 successful businesses because of what Coach Wooden taught me. I've conquered cancer 3 times because of the strength Coach Wooden gave me." And then he really got me. He says, I survived the death of my 12-year-old daughter because of the way Coach Wooden loved me. And he pretty much walked out and said, "See you at Dribble for the Cure. Welcome to the UCLA family." And I was like, whoa. And I walked over to my computer, really ran over to my computer, looked him up, and he didn't even mention that he was a starting guard on 2 of Coach Wooden's national championship teams, and that he played 8 years in the NBA, because it paled in comparison to the man he became. And that really became the fuel, as I want to create as many John Valley stories as I possibly can as a leader. And, and so if I only have great motivational speakers, then I'm not giving them anything to create those kinds of equipping stories, those kinds of, oh, by the way, we won a national championship. Oh, by the way, I made the WNBA or the Olympics, but it always pales in comparison to the young woman I became. And, and I think that's really what I really love about It Takes What It Takes, is that it's a part of a blueprint. We work with another group called Focus 3 that's very similar in this, that Tim and Brian Kite, but the reason I've really latched on is that it gives a systematic approach to behaviors that over time creates equipping that are with our young people long after they leave us.
Well, you know what's interesting about those dudes, because I do have an opinion.
Okay.
Is they kind of did a year with Urban,
Mm.
you know, and Urban's got some dudes. Let's be honest. And then they went like right out and made it a business.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I as you know, I chose a different path. 18 years of staying in that world. No Instagram, no social media, none of that. You know, that you weren't going to do that and be a part of the Nick Saban architecture. You know, it was about the players. It was about, you know, all that stuff. So it was interesting when those guys kind of jumped right out and USA football and did all those different types of things, and they had sort of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
But they did spend time with Urban. They did put a system together. You know, and the content makes sense, and the content. Let's be honest. There's nothing. I mean, people can say, you know, like, wow, neutral thinking's revolutionary and illusion of choice and all this stuff, but it's all the same stuff that, like, you know, Norman Vincent Peale was talking about in 1953, or John Wooden was talking about, you know, playing high school basketball in 1930.
Right. No, you're right. And in all fairness, those guys were doing it in the business world before they ever met Urban.
Right.
You know, so they were doing it there and in schools with school districts. And so they were really trying to do it on that front. You know, and so, but I agree with you. I think that it's being nimble enough that you're committed to the same principles, but you're reading the young people that you're with. And so, you know, I think that I have to adapt.
But you have a program, but see, like, that's the key, right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, you have a scalable program, you're executing it, you're implementing it. You know, there was another guy that used to do work out of Arizona that had, like, it's just so important.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm flattered because we touched point at an early part in your career, and because Jimbo was mentored by Coach Saban, because, you know, sports psychology, it's not going to grow in college sports.
Mm-hmm.
There's no pathway for growth. Because coaches only teach, for the most part, what they grew up or were educated in.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, and then I've pivoted, like the Focus 3 guys, with Russ. Well, really more important, because Maria Shriver called me and said, why are you spending your life with 150 athletes? You know, you got a voice for 150 million people. And she's like, I couldn't even find you on the internet. You know, and that was a real powerful moment for me. I wasn't sure. I didn't really believe her, because when people don't know about the sports world, if you're not the head coach, you're not the players. Your job is behind the scenes, and that's the world you live. And you're in those stadiums and all those things, but you have a role to play. And really, your number one goal, my goal always was relevance, and that's what I loved about it. Like, people would ask me, because you know, in 2013. Every weekend, I rotated between Florida State and Alabama on the sideline with the teams Thursday through Sunday. Florida State was number 1, and Alabama was number 2.
Wow.
And like it was not easy to navigate. So I also didn't want to be highly visible to the players, but there wasn't a lot of places to look to find people. So we all kind of shared the same psychological people: the clinical mental health support, the substance abuse support, the motivational support, the Wall Street motivational support, and Jimbo, Nick, and Kirby, and all those guys, because we knew and we, you know, that was an important part. So what I want people to see is a coach that isn't bullshitting people. Like, you're putting your money where your mouth is, and you're not giving up 98% of your practice. At the end of your practice, you're doing something. At the beginning of your practice, you're doing something very similar to what Phil Jackson did. But the core of your sport is having really good players that can execute and run fast set screens and run the UCLA offense, and be competitive in a really good basketball conference. And yet you're still finding time to make sure that steering wheel is entrenched.
Right.
And so I think that's where, if I'm a leader and I'm watching this, let me see you, like, stop bullshitting. And then also, like, the programs you teach, try to make them good.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you went out and got somebody who had transitioned to sports, but they won a national championship and had been proven in Columbus in business. Like, and then you had to invest money in it.
Right.
You know, and I think, you know, it's something that makes sense. My hope for neutral thinking is that for people who really struggle with being positive, and I think as many male and female athletes struggle with that, a lot connected to what your alumni are saying, identity. For those people, I think it's easier to just get to this neutral state and be like, you know what? When I get back in the game, I'm just going to try to get up, make a good entry pass, and play good defense. You know, I'm not going to worry about, well, you know, I need to score 14 points to stay on my average.
Well, and I think that's where the other part I would say, you talked about the beginning and the end, but I think it's the language throughout as well. You talk about that, and it takes what it takes is, you know, providing the right language around it. It started with, we taught our whole staff how we wanted to approach mental conditioning, what our plan was, why it was our plan, and how we weren't going to be the same style, just like, you know, all the different football coaches, maybe as they're teaching, they're maybe, I mean, it may not be the same style, but it's the same content. And so we had a teaching segment with our entire staff. And I think that's a huge piece for coaches, is that you got to be willing to really teach yourself first. And then you got to go out with a plan, and then it's got to be woven into everything you do. It's not a faucet you turn on. Like, okay, we got our 4 minutes in. Okay, we're done. You know, it's a plan. It's a lifestyle, and you got to work on it all the time. And so I would say that, you know, it's even more so a priority of like another drill. It's like a fabric of the way we think, act, talk. And you got to have a plan to do it, you know. And I think consistency, like anything else, is so key.
Yeah, just that, you know, whether it's monthly or, but I do think trying to have a program that's good is important, because it's a lot harder to do, and that's why I have so much pride that I survived. Like, and when I look at the sports world, obviously I still have teams I do and things of that nature, and but I'm like so grateful
because the sports world is not looking for Tony Robbins. They're not actively out listening to podcasts. I'm talking about players.
Right.
They're not like they don't. They're not. There's no growth mindset relative. I mean, it's just not. That's just not how it is. You know, you occasionally get Russell Wilson and you know, or a Cheryl Miller. But then you also have, like, for anybody who has followed Mia Hamm's story, like, her confidence was not believed or thought in the same way at all.
Right.
You know? And so an architecture had to be designed to help support her around that. So I just think if you give people a baseline and it's good,
you
know, and it's like, I think it helps. And I think, like, focusing on the behaviors, and hey, because a lot of those kids are going to be brats. I didn't do anything good today. What's your problem? Me. Okay. Well, what do you mean by me? Well, you know, just me. Like, well, okay. You know, I didn't try. What do you, like, in what way? And then you get them like, I didn't have my butt to the baseline. I didn't play help side defense. I didn't, you know, and we get in our own feelings. So I just think it's powerful because you make a lot of money. You're successful. You run an organization that is far more than coaching basketball, particularly at a place like UCLA. You know, from recruiting and infrastructure and architecture, and yet you add the pieces that are relevant. Let me ask you a couple more questions, Coach. You know, what's your best advice? You know, as a high performer, as a great athlete, as a great coach, to helping people who are struggling with just what's happening in Southern California and the world right now?
Well, man, it's a daily struggle. You know, I think you have to redefine. One of the things I would say is sort of redefine the success of your day. You know, I think it's, what does it look like for me to give and grow today? I ask myself that every morning. So what does it look like for me to give and grow today? And, you know, it's going to look a little bit different. And so I think it's really important that, you know, people look at that. I think it's being honest about your anxiousness. I talk about a lot living in the healthy tension. that, you know, I'm going to have days where I'm feeling a little bit anxious about where we're going and what's going to happen and how does this affect my staff and how are my players doing and that kind of thing. But at the same time, forcing myself to really think about being self-aware and going, okay, what's my next right step? And what can I control? What can't I control? And try to stay in that space of, you know, there's a lot I can do to make a difference in the world and to continue to grow myself. So trying to just focus on that next right step without being in denial about some of the things that we're facing.
Yeah, I think that's incredible. And
I'm plugging.
and that's what I.
Hold on.
Yep.
All right, I'm back. Sorry, go ahead.
Cool. How has the idea of neutral thinking been useful during this time for you?
Well, and I think I'm still learning this. So I think we're in, I'm about 3/4 of the way through the book and our team is doing this. So I think I'm not sure I'm there yet. I think I'm really becoming aware of when I'm not having neutral thinking, to be honest with you. It's building that awareness, like catching it going, okay, I'm not neutral right now. I like doing this kind of stuff with teams. In my 27 years, I've never had a team disengaged in a book, ever. And it's been our staff and our team. And so, and it's been fun is because they've been like going, okay, well, let's go back to the locker room. You know, if we had neutral thinking in this game, how would our behavior have looked different? How would our talk have been different? And I started to think about during these times, you know, like if I have neutral thinking and, you know, we just found out we might have to be indoors for 3 more months, stay at home for 3 more months. And, you know, how can I use neutral thinking to, you know, to have better you know, responses to those kinds of adverse situations. And, you know, so I think that it really, I'm a work in progress, Trevor, if I'm going to be really honest with you. I think the biggest thing that's happened to me right now is I'm building my awareness of how often my mind isn't in neutral and really excited about building a better habit in that direction.
Well, I think, you know, my hope is that we understand, just be less hard on ourselves about the inside thoughts. I think you as a great athlete know you had a lot of times before games where your mind was all over the place and you found a way to out-behave your way through it. And so much of the self-help industry is targeted towards, you know, changing the inside thoughts, and that's tough. But the outside voice, is where the real power is. Secondly, the consumption. You know, if I'm a college athlete now, you know, and I get these texts and I talk to these kids, and you know, we might not be able to leave our house for 18 months, might not be able to see a conference, you know, and like, where are you getting your information? Make sure you're getting it from the school president. Make sure you're getting it from your coach.
You know, and we don't, you know, like, and kind of each state sort of handling things on their own, right? Like Georgia, apparently, like Georgia, like never had a pandemic. You know, and so other states, it's been bigger, and nothing's right or wrong. I'm just saying, so kind of regionally, it depends on some of those factors. Right. But obviously, this is very real. So the idea of neutral is, look, today is real. Our past is over, good or bad. What happens next is kind of how we respond, and we got to stay adaptable and trust our leaders. And you're doing the best you can with the information you have.
It's really, you know, try not to listen with your heart. The first couple of weeks I was at home, I was like watching the news and the updates every day. And that was not healthy. I was not good to anyone. And I spent so much emotional energy trying to figure out what's true, what's not, where should I get information from? And literally eliminating that has made such a difference, you know. So, you know, so professionally in the midst of this pandemic, you know, I think it's really been important of who's really involved in a non-biased, non-slanted, non-political role, and how can I, you know, go to those sources effectively and try not to ride the waves of the emotions of that particular day. And personally, to be honest with you, you know, one of the stories that in your book where you talk about Russ and you talk about Hillsong and having the music on when he's, you know, you walked in there and started your day, and that was very intentional. You know, I spend time sowing those seeds into my life every morning, and I write down every day, I write down 10 things I'm thankful for and 10 truths I know to be true in my life. And so I re-anchor myself every single day. And I don't think you carry it over. I think you got to reset your mind every single day. And so that's been a big piece for me, is my faith. Is I really believe I serve a God who's bigger than all of it, who's not surprised, who's my ultimate provider. That's me personally.
Yeah.
So me as a leader, I try to be really informed well, and then I really try to keep a pure heart in that it's not about me. It's really about serving our mission and serving the people around me.
And there's times that we just don't know, and doing the best you can. And you have players all over the place relative to their social dynamics, their financial dynamics, where they come from. That a lot of this stuff, they're not rolling back to Beverly Hills and staying, sheltering in place. So. Cori, I think before I give you sort of our final thought here, what I think is incredible is how you've evolved. Because let's be honest, being a great player is not the pathway to being a great coach, and not being a great player doesn't mean that you can't be a great coach.
So the education in getting a chance to be mentored by Coach Wooden. And taking advantage of that opportunity and listening, and going to a place like UCLA with the humility that you have to have, but also the confidence that you need to say, no, I deserve to be here. And then also on your journey where you were basically the number 2 to a really good, coach in a really tough league as well, but with a very different athlete that you get in the Southeast than you do in the Southwest.
Absolutely. Real quick, is that what you said there is, I think, so important to any kind of coach or leader. Forget just coaching, just in the leader in general. Is Coach Wooden sat me down. I remember before I went to Florida State, I sat down with him and I was asking him, like, if I ever have a chance to become a head coach, what advice would you give me? And first of all, he always says, I don't give advice, I just share my opinion. And he always said that. But he said 3 things to me that really have stuck with me forever. And he said, 4 things. One is, he said, always try to coach people's hearts, not just coach their game. And meaning by that, they really know you care about them. And if you really know it's genuine, you can push them really hard. You can get those kinds of behaviors to help them find gears inside of them that maybe they didn't know they had through next right behaviors. But he always talked about the reason we were able to push our guys to the extent that they were is they knew that we were never coaching them for our benefit. Always coach in a genuine spirit and coach people's hearts. Secondly, he said, coach within your personality. So you talk about, having the confidence to go in there. I mean, I was mentored by like this legend. I mean, I worked with, Sue Semrau and, Mark French and these people that did these amazing things. And I go into a UCLA job, and on paper, I don't deserve that job. And one of the reasons that I felt confident is that, number one, I had prepared. I'd worked my butt off to prepare, have a plan, have a vision that I thought fit my personality and my leadership. And then Coach Wooden always used to tell me, it's not about how I did things. It's the principles and you finding out how you would do things. And I think it freed me up to coach within my personality. There's a set of behaviors and a set of principles, but I'm not trying to be somebody else. I'm not even trying to be Coach Wooden. I'm trying to have an impact like he did. I'm trying to gain from his principles, but I'm not trying to be him. And then lastly, he would say, never, ever, ever, be too good to learn. And he's always talking about drinking deeply from good books. But that's one of the reasons that I go to Florida State and I meet you and I go, man, can I get more? Can I go listen when you talk at Jimbo's practices? Can I go and hang out? Can you tell me more? Because I just never wanted to have my quest to learn and get better and to tweak and adapt. And to grow. I didn't want that to be squelched. And so no matter who you are, whether you're leading a business or a family or anything else, I've found that those things really I believe to be true is, coach people's hearts, make it never about you, make sure you're a lifelong learner, and really coach within your personality and know that that's enough.
Well, I can't think of a better way to put an exclamation point on things. And you know, and I think what's, you know, I always tell people, because sometimes I'll get ready to speak at a big event, 6,000, 7,000, it's all business people. And well, you know, like I know you're coming from the sports world, and I'm like, as if that's not a business.
Yeah.
You know, and like it's the ultimate business. And so, you know, one of the things that always struck me about Coach Saban was just, you know, his understanding of who he was, and then, you know, his non-judgmental way of looking at things that needed to be addressed, taking the bias out of them, and like, all right, you know, are we doing everything that we need to do here, or is it window dressing?
Mm-hmm.
And so and we're not going to always have money. You know, we're gonna have to find ways. I mean, when we first got to Alabama, he said, I don't have a budget to do any of that. And I said, well, you know, why not? And he said, well, when I asked them about it, they said, well, that's not how Bear Bryant did it. You know, and like, what are you going to say to that? Oh, nothing. So
That's how we have here. That's how Coach Wooden did it.
Right. So I said, so we got creative and we found ways, and you know, there's Champs Life Skills and other ways to get some money. And I took my first couple of years like psychological pay. He said, look, if you're going to learn how to do it and you can build a model. And I was like, it'd be pretty cool to build a model at Alabama football. Mm-hmm. You know, even if no one ever really heard much about it because we kept it more quiet. You know, which is so much different now as truthfully, Cori, as I wrote the book, and then I started to learn more about the business psychology people and the motivational speakers and all those things who are anything but quiet. You know, it's a totally different industry. You know, like, hey, I've made $900 billion. I'm the best in the world, you know, and if you do these things, you can make 900 billion too. I always laugh, like if I was to say something like that in front of Jimbo or Mark or something like this, hey man, this got nothing to do with you. Like, you serve our program, serve our players. And so I love the fact that in all your discussions, everything has been really about service, whether it's in your own faith and in your own understanding to learn, your own understanding to educate, not being afraid of your own fears, but recognizing them. If you're not afraid right now, you know, then you're not being honest. And as much as I tell people you got to be really careful with the news, you know, you can't feed those addictions, but you also need to know what's going on.
Right.
And so,
well, Trevor, let me interrupt you real quick, because I really want to, I give you props for this. You mentioned earlier about if you're in your role, sometimes you're you know, you're on the outside, you're behind the scenes. And I would say that if you hadn't handled that with the kind of selflessness and other-centeredness, there's no way Russell Wilson would have been picking you, you know, because you earn the credibility. Like, he doesn't need someone to come work with him that's about advancing their next thing. You know, if that happens as a byproduct, so be it, which is, you know, it's happening that way. But if that was, he would have sniffed that out a mile away. Yeah. And, you know, I think that I always say that, you know, I get a lot of the, you know, I get to be on a podcast with you or a webinar with you, or I get a lot of people that contact me, but I'm not the real hero of UCLA basketball. That's just not the case. It's these other people that make up the fabric, the day to day. I get the privilege of creating the vision and the plan, and hopefully I'm a good role model of what I'm saying. But, you know, I think back to listening to what Jimbo said about you, hearing about your career, and then now reading the book and seeing that relationship with you and Russ. I just think if you hadn't have been faithful with those behind the scenes roles, you would never have been ready, or someone like Russell Wilson would never have picked you for the role that you have now. Yeah. So props to you for being that kind of guy.
No, and I appreciate it. And it kind of all goes back to a point I talked about in the book. You know, I grew up obviously in Tacoma, Washington, and the football coach, Frosty Westering, which if you've ever read, he's got some great books. And Frosty was like this, he and my dad were really close, and he was this big, and he was very spiritual. My dad had to kind of thread that line because he taught to a agnostic sort of, you know, business world where some were and some weren't. But, his quote, "Make the big time where you are,"
Right.
was so powerful to me.
Mhm.
And I just remember, like in 99 and 2000, coaching, the under 15 B team, and like knowing that they got everything I had,
Yeah.
and then the under 14 boys soccer club, or, the first basketball team at IMG Academy. And then, or my first time, with Texas A&M women's soccer, or to get Gary Blair's players, or to prepare to get, 35 minutes with Sue's team, which I had to prepare totally differently, because the way you would deliver content or the activities were a lot different than how you would do it otherwise. So if you make the big time where you are, and you get good at where you're at, then it makes sense to take that next step. And that's why I always would tell parents, like, I know you want to move them up age groups, and I know you want to push there, and and I'll close with this. I remember Yvonne Lendl. We're sitting down, and we're at a time. It's 2003, and Michael Beasley, Freddie Adu, Maria Sharapova, Yelena Yankovic, Michelle Wee, Paula Kramer, they're all living within 3 dorms of each other in Bradenton.
Mm-hmm.
And it's incredible. And so Yvonne Lendl, which people maybe don't know, but he was like the ultimate bad guy in tennis.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
He was just like this Eastern Bloc, just no emotion, just straight killer, so good. But now he had 3 girls, and they were all playing golf at IMG Academy, and just kind of blended in. And I talked to him a lot. So he came in, and I just said, let's go through each of them and tell me what you think's going to happen. And I'll never forget his comparison between Michelle Wee and Paula Kramer. For those of you that follow golf, Michelle Wee at that time had signed a $10 million guarantee for marketing with William Morris. And she's basically, she played at Stanford ultimately, but she was a prodigy. She could hit the ball 320 yards. And immediately they moved her into playing against men. And Paula Kramer, or they were about to, that was like an option at the time. And Paula Kramer was 16, Michelle was 14, and had won everything from age 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and moved down from Santa Rosa, and her family put her at IMG Academy. IMG signed her. She had the potential to become a top 5 female athlete, very marketable as well, nicknamed the Pink Panther. And I said, but Michelle Wee seemed by far the more talent. It certainly would dominate the women's tour. And he said, Paula will blow her out. I said, what do you mean? He said, well, Paula's been winning since she was 4 years old. She knows how to close games. She knows how to close out matches. She has the confidence. I'm like, yeah, but that's like a 10-year-old versus 10-year-old. He's like, Michelle has every shot, but they never gave her a chance to learn how to win. And learning how to win is where you get your confidence from. And you saw how Mr. Williams did that with the Williams sisters. And so, like, you can't cheat any step in the process.
Yeah.
And I just think that so much of right now, like learning how to do a Zoom meeting. You're not going to step up and do a Zoom meeting. I was watching this podcast I did today, and like I'm coughing because I didn't even know how to sit for an hour and a half in these weird chairs to do these things. Like everything's going to take some time, and we're going to adjust, and we're going to adapt, and wearing these masks and going through, all this testing and all these different types of things that, that will become part of our new normal. We got to adapt, and we got to learn, and companies got to be patient, and trying harder is not going to always be the answer.
No. Got to be smarter as well as trying harder. And I think that's why, I really think sometimes, you have divine timing with your book and when it came out. But, talk about a time that you need to learn how to have neutral thinking, because the emotions, and we're being untethered from the illusion that we had all this control. You talk about the illusion of choice. Well, we're having to face our illusion of control also. And at the same time. And so, I really see, Maria Shriver was onto something when she said, you have a chance to really impact, 50 million and not just 5 or 150 or however the number, because we need this. We need neutral thinking for our own sakes, our own peace of mind. And, I think there's no coincidence of when this is coming out.
Well, I think to quote Coach Wooden, I think it would be the principles, but I think that it does make sense. And truthfully, if you follow the data, when we can eliminate the negativity, primarily how we externalize it, which I know you understand because we're always in control of that.
Yeah.
And B, that doesn't mean that we can't be direct and we can't be principled and we can't tell people what they need to do. But when we also, can minimize the consumption and then just go to the behavior, like these are the things that are going to allow you to navigate this time more successfully, but you will feel some tension. You are going to have some of this. We may be in our homes for a few more months, but think bigger picture, and kind of go from there. But Cori, I look forward to staying in touch and B, to the continued success of UCLA women's basketball, the brand, just such a cool campus. Westwood, such an amazing place. And you're going to get a lot of fans from this webinar. If people want to follow you and learn more about you, where can they follow you, Coach?
Well, I think it's Coach Cori on most handles, Twitter, Instagram.
Cori, right?
Cori. So Cori, Cori. I should know this, but I don't. But Cori Close is my name. I think it's Coach Cori on most of those. You can look me up that way. But it's really about impacting people and enjoying that. But I really appreciate you having me on. I appreciate the impact that your book is having on my program as well as on me. And I'm looking forward to keeping in touch a little bit better over the next 15 years.
Thanks, Coach.
All right. Thanks so much.
DJ, we're headed back to you, brother.
Hey, that was awesome. Thank you, Coach Close. Thank you, Trevor. Again, just some really specific things that people can do in the area of mindset to get better. You have that What Went Well journal. I love that, Coach Close. I think so many people focus on the negative and what went wrong. And for you to be able to capture those things, whether you're doing visualizations, whether you're doing the journals, you are helping mold your team as a leader to be able to get them to the next level. And I admire that about you, and we appreciate you sharing that with our audience. So with that, we're going to get into the chat room. And actually, the chat room's over here. And so if you guys can just type in your questions, and we'll answer them accordingly. And we'd love to interact with you there. So with that, hope you guys have a great rest of the day and a great weekend. We'll talk to you soon.